Hey Daniel, I'm good.
Good.
How are you?
I'm good. Doing well.
Good. Yeah. Yeah, I watched your the video yesterday.
Oh,
Some good
okay.
topics there. Yeah, some good topics. I wish I had been in class to be able to discuss some of those things with you guys.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe we'll
Yeah.
go over them here now. I don't think I have a lot planned for tonight. Um,
Okay.
but you never know. Sometimes we get going.
Mhm. Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was some needed topics
Hmm.
last
Definitely.
time. Yes. Somebody
So I
else?
think this is our second to last, right? I think
I
we
believe
have
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So second to last class. Wow.
Hmm.
Gone by pretty quick, it seems like, at least for me.
Yeah, I think so. It's been enjoyable for me. So yeah, but it's I've I appreciate this class. It's something that I need, for myself. So really
Oh,
appreciate
yeah.
it. Yeah, I
Good.
think we got someone that jumped in. Who is it? Annette. Hi, Annette.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi guys, how you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you so much. Sorry, a little late.
Oh, no, you're all right. You're doing great.
That age is catching up with me. I had to take a little nap. I had to jump off work and get a quick nap so I can get back on. So
Yeah, that's right. I'm like that
Yeah.
too.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. When I got to my 40s, I was still treating my body like I was still in my 30s and 20s,
Hmm.
and my body told me really quick, "Hey, it's
Right.
different now."
Exactly.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I'll still think I'm young, and then my body reminds me I'm not in my 20s. So,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
There's an old saying that I don't know if you guys are familiar. I don't know if it's just what they call a colloquialism, I guess they call it for in the black community. But they say your body is willing, but I'm sorry, your mind is willing, but the body is not. So that's how I feel
Mhm.
sometimes. It's like I think
Yeah.
I could do it, I want to do it, but like you said, my body is like, I don't think we're gonna do it.
oh yes.
Mhm.
Definitely. All right. Well, let's see what time we got here. A couple minutes over. So, as if others join in, and we'll probably be in the middle of a conversation that hopefully they can jump right into. So,
Mhm.
all right, my camera's a little bouncy today. I apologize for that. Let me see if I can put it on there a little better so it doesn't jump quite so much. I don't want to give anybody a headache or anything. Jumping camera. All right. Well, as we begin our conversation, if you don't mind, I'll just take a moment to. Oh, there's a manual. I'm going to take a moment just to pray and ask God to bless our conversation. So let's go ahead and pray. Father, I thank you for this moment that we can gather um, from literally all around this earth and be able to talk about things that are important because they involve your people and they involve your heart. So, Father, I pray that you bless our conversations, that they bring honor to you, that in all things that we seek you first, and that we don't lose sight of our purpose and of our mission. And so much, there's so many things that can distract us and take our focus away from who you call us to be. And I pray that we can just remove those distractions and concentrate on you, focus on you and our relationship with you first and foremost. And it is in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. All right. We are nearing the end. So of our class times together. Next week will be the last one. Um, and so let's start out with this. This isn't just to the purpose of these classes. I want to hear what you think. Are there some things that stood out to you the most? Has there been something that's been the most helpful or insightful, or what has been the hardest thing to grasp? So any or all of these that you would like to address. This isn't to build me up or to tear me down. This is simply what have we learned together, and then maybe I can use it. They offer this class in the future. I can kind of focus in on some more things so that it continues to grow and that others can grasp the concept. So I'm going to start that off. If anybody has anything on any of those, I'd love to hear your thoughts. While I take a sip of water.
I guess I'll unmute here. I guess for me, things that have stood out the most, I gravitated to things that some of the hardships that you've shared with us in your own job and mission. Because it's something that also I am going through in my life here. When you shared with us that the first time you said you failed, I have a feeling that uh, I've been put in the same situation too. I was going into something where I thought, okay, I could handle this, but I find myself failing at it. So that, and then when I watched some of the video from the last class, some of those things, the self-care, things like that, I found helpful. Um, Hardest concept to grasp, probably that too, is just coming into a place where a lot of people are going to maybe lean on you and expect things from you and believe that you can give these things when you're running out and you have nothing left over to pour into them. um, what maybe I would like to hear about, if you have maybe some experience, or I guess that time when Jesus, he told his disciples, hey, let's go over to another island, let's get some rest. And then when they get there, they find the multitude there, and so you probably in your mission or in your job, um, you probably found yourself in that kind of place where you're looking for rest, you need it, but then boom, someone comes or an event comes and something like that. So how do you deal with something like that? Do you just plow through it? But how do you try to get in some? How do you cope with that? Do you try to get a filling in or something like that? But maybe something like that also.
Very good. And maybe at the end, we might have time to talk about that some more too. So I'm going to try to leave next week pretty flexible so that we can just basically kind of do a Q&A if we want. So looks like, are you unmuted, Emmanuel? Did I read that right? Somebody.
This is Annette. I'll go. I have quite a few things like highlighted, but I don't want to just go down a list because it was so much that was valuable to me um, in this class, and so I appreciate even how it was presented, right, to give us an opportunity um, to share, our thoughts, our struggles, and things like that. So I appreciate that. Um, but what stood out the most, I think I can't pinpoint like a most, like I said, with so many things, but the one that's really on my mind is from the last class where you said that we work from grace and not for it. So that stood out to me a lot, and I have to be mindful of that. A couple other things were knowing that at some point or another, like we all are marginalized, and it's not this cookie cutter of a person that we may think, that is not just centered on a person that we may have in mind, but we all are marginalized in some kind of way. And then the one I would say that struck me last week, as I mentioned, my experience with giving, like giving to the homeless. I do that a lot, but I appreciate the challenge that this class has presented, where to take that up a notch, basically, is like, don't be satisfied with just handing out. There's some people that can really benefit from some additional guidance, I would say, like towards the Lord. Like, give them, I think a lot of people say, teach them how to fish. So coming from that perspective, so I appreciate that. Um, it's been a lot of insightful moments, Daniel, to be honest, just the sharing from everybody, hearing from guys across the ocean and the waters. It's just really been a great class, and everybody contributing to it. I've just really enjoyed it. Almost sad that it's ending. I've enjoyed it so much, so I appreciate the time.
Uh, Yeah, I know I'm going to miss the time because we've had some great conversations, and uh, you all have really challenged me. So I appreciate that. I don't want to cut anybody off. So if you have anything while I'm talking, just feel free to chime in.
Okay, I'll come in.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I think I'm on the same line as the thank you for what you for sharing your experiences with us, and just um just learning that the broad spectrum of people who are marginalized. So just it's not, it might be by God leading us to something else, or it might just be um um it might just be, sorry, someone's had fun. Can you hear me? I don't know.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So it's yeah, so it's not, might God leading us to something else, or it might be as a cause of our action, or just, yeah, just things, various things. So it's been good to learn about that, and as well as how we can help those who are marginalized, especially people like homeless people. So I, from the perspective I was seeing was wrong. So just handing them down like the last person's, yeah, like I think it was Annette, um it's not just by giving them money, or there's a lot more ways we can help to do that. Like, it might be tough love, because by doing that, you might be prolonging their state, their condition, their bad condition they're in. So it's about, maybe their family is expecting them to come home. So yeah, so just, yeah, thinking things like that, and then just how to apply it, because it doesn't come easy. Because if you go around town, it's natural just to go over and just say, oh, have some. So yeah, so that's been helpful. So it's just for me to apply that. So that's what I'll be working on. So thank you.
All right, I appreciate that. And those concepts are challenging, because you want so desperately to help. We want to help. We have a heart to help. And asking those questions, am I really helping? How can I best help? And I will admit that's difficult to do if you're just seeing somebody for the first time. Um, you know, but maybe having some type of a conversation starts that process. So yes, definitely. All right. I apparently put that same slide on there twice. That's all right. This is what we are trying to avoid. We looked at this. We looked at the left side now twice, and then we looked at the whole slide, I believe, last week. the steps to dependency and the steps to paternalism. And again, paternalism has to do with controlling someone else, and a person of authority having control over someone. And that doesn't necessarily mean you are maliciously or intentionally trying to have control over someone. So I don't want to present it like that, but this person, as we're giving and they become more dependent upon us, we all of a sudden are gaining some type of control over them, whether we know it or we don't. And so that's what we really are trying to avoid. We want people that are going to be self-sufficient. We want men and women that are able to come to this point where they can provide for themselves based on their relationship and their resources that God has given them. And so we move someone from being totally dependent upon, whether that's a system or totally dependent upon handouts or the mercy of others, to now learning to thrive, not just survive. Survival is important. God put a fight or flight mechanism in us for survival, but we want people that thrive and that flourish, that live life abundantly, that live an abundant life. And so just to go over these one more time. So from one side, if you take care of a need that I have, you give to me, I'm going to be very, very appreciative, because it was probably a need that was immediate, that I needed right away. That's why it's a need. You do it a second time, and I'm so, oh man, thank you, thank you, thank you. I start to get in a bind that third time, and I'm anticipating you giving it. I bet if I go to Ace, he'll give it to me one more time. And so then you give that third time, and I'm expected. Now I'm expecting you to do it again. I'm feeling entitled. So whenever you don't provide for my immediate need, or you don't give me the money that I want, or all of a sudden I feel like you're wrong because I'm entitled to it now. Why? Because I've become dependent upon you. And so we want to avoid that. On the other side, we want to avoid controlling someone, whether knowingly or unknowingly. Right? So why there are folks, let me just put it in a simple everyday thing. We go to work and we do what the boss says. Why? Because we're dependent upon that job. Right? We're dependent upon the finances that come from it. So, I love to spend time with the people. I hate doing the administration paperwork stuff. Right? But he says, hey, you're spending a lot of time with the people, and we really, really appreciate that. But you're really behind on all your administration stuff. And so today your focus is administration. I'm allowing him to control me because I'm completely dependent upon that paycheck that I get. And so there's that kind of relationship. But whenever it comes to something besides just our job, when it becomes, man, I had to borrow money from my brother, or I had to have a church in town pay my bill, or an organization. I had to go to the food pantry, and I start to become dependent upon that. What happens? I'm allowing myself in some way to be controlled, at least by their systems that are in place. And so that's something to keep in mind and to try to avoid, because we don't like this terminology, but if we're not careful, this becomes a form of slavery, because you're bound to someone and they're controlling you. And so we don't want that to happen in any way. And so that's why that's important. And none of us, I don't believe anybody that's listening to this, you know, whatever they're seeing, even if they're just came across it on YouTube and it says God's heart for the marginalized, I don't think anybody that would be watching this would deliberately say, man, I really want to control somebody. But if we're not careful, that's exactly what we do, whether we know it or we don't. And so that's why I keep bringing up the point that we want people to flourish more than just giving them a handout. Yeah, we address needs. We got to take care of needs, their needs, but we want people that flourish. We want to show dignity to people, right? If I make you dependent upon me and I control you, I'm not giving you any dignity. I'm making you into something God never intended you to be, because he has set us free to openly and freely serve him. So for the next few minutes, I want to talk about inputs, outputs, and outcomes. All right. So I hope these, don't let these terms kind of confuse you. I know some of them, they sound similar, but inputs are basically, they're the resources that are required to produce outcomes. So like maybe in my job, I rely on volunteers a lot. So it's how many volunteers do I need? How many hours do I need to spend? How much money do I need to raise in order to keep this whole thing going? In order to produce the outcomes that I want to produce, what resources are required of me? Everybody needs some type of inputs, right? You just to live your life and get by, you have to have some inputs. You have to think of, okay, how many hours do I need to work to be able to pay for my mortgage or my rent? How many hours do I need to work at my job? How much money? So it's all about just the resources that are required to do the things that you want or need to do. So that's input. And outputs are the activity and resources that are used. So for example, we publish daily kind of a stats on our website. By the way, if you ever want to follow it, it's just GRM Muskogee. That's Gospel Rescue Mission Muskogee. And it's we put like our outputs, which is we served this many meals last night. We had this many guests stay that are in our program. We had this many people that came just for overnight care. And so those are outputs. It's a church's outputs might be, we have this many services, we have this many people in our youth group, we have we support these amount of missionaries in these countries or in this city. So those are outputs. And then what we really want is outcome, because outcomes are long-term sustainable changes. So from my perspective, I want my guests to get gainful employment, meaning not just a day labor job where somebody pulls up in a pickup truck and says, hey, I need a worker today. All right. For one, that's illegal to do. I don't know if it is federally, but it is illegal here in our state to do day labor jobs. And so I want them to get gainful employment. So one of my inputs is I've got to place within the people that I work with a work ethic or people skills of how to get along with people so that they're not showing up and not knowing how to respond to people and end up having to leave because, you know, they all of a sudden blew up or exploded in anger. And so just things like that. So adequate housing. I want them to find more than just the government housing. I mean, government housing is good because it does get them off the streets and out of the mission, but I would love it for them to be a place where it's actually their place. where it's their, they get to take care of their own yard. They get to go and plant a little garden if they want one, or they get to paint the walls whatever color they want, instead of the standard white that all the housing projects in our city make you paint it. And so I would love for them to find adequate housing. So what input do I need to put into that? Let's talk about, first, let's get you gainful employment, and then let's talk about budgeting and saving and preparing. Self-sufficiency, same kind of things. Or maybe I want them to restore their affiliations. That was their closest familial relationships, right? So I want them to if at all possible, right? Some I might need them. There's some people I actually have to say, get away from your family. They're destroying you, right? And those are tough conversations, because those are sad. But I want, in an ideal world, I want them to have gainful employment, adequate housing, self-sufficiency, affiliations restored, and ultimately, I want them to have a growing relationship with Christ. That's my ultimate goal for them. So, to put it another way to help us understand it, is mission is why do we exist? So, on a personal perspective, why am I here on this earth? Or if you are part of a ministry that reaches out to people, asking yourself, why do we exist? Whether that's maybe your church group, it's an outreach group, whatever it is. Why are we here? What are we here for? Why do we exist? What's our purpose? Inputs, we ask, what's required? What is required to reach my outcome? What is required of me? Outputs is what I provide. So, keeping in theme with the mission that I work at, we exist. What we say, we have a big long mission statement, but it basically says that we partner with the community to serve those in crisis, to restore them to freedom in Christ and through the transforming power of the gospel. We want them to thrive. We want them to find dignity. We want them to be self-sufficient, to actually come back and serve others. We want to get to that point. What's required? A lot of work, a lot of resources, a lot of volunteers. And so classes, organization, making sure that our building is upkept so that we can safely house people. If we bring them in and all of our water's out, or we have no plumbing or something like that, we have code violations and we're shut down, we haven't served our purpose. What do we provide? So we have basic needs. We have food, shelter, and clothing on a very basic level. On a deeper level, we provide a safe place for people to come to find counseling. So we have counsel that we recommend people to. We have Bible studies that they attend. We have budgeting classes. We have a Work Start program that teaches everyday job skills and specialized job skills. We got a work Start that we call Work Start 2.0, and that's where we put you in an actual job with a business, and we maintain a relationship with that business so that if something's going on, either my guest isn't understanding the manager or the manager doesn't understand the guest, we are the mediator for a month while they learn the job. That way, if they have a problem, I know how to speak to somebody and say, okay, listen, this is what's going on. This is what's wrong. You can't talk to people that way. You just can't. Or whatever the situation might be. Okay, so that's what we provide. And then the outcome is they're going to get out of there and they're going to keep that job. And it's no longer going to be an internship, but it's going to be a job that actually pays a livable wage, not just minimum wage, but a good wage. to where they come out. So I have a lot of guests that leave, and they leave making more money than I make, and I love it. I think that's the coolest thing. Unless they complain about it, then it makes me a little upset. If I'm being completely honest with you guys. So those are, ask yourself, and it could be with anything. So you personally, or your family unit, all right, whatever your situation is, your job, why do I exist? Why do we exist? What is required? What am I providing? And what matters long term? So from a long-term perspective, if I go in there and somebody graduates and they have a job that pays them well, and they have a house, and they have a car, and they can get around, and they got some money in a savings account, but they don't have a relationship with God, then I feel like I failed in my mission, because I want that relationship with God to be the primary source of all things. And so we're going to talk about that relationship with God in just a few minutes. But do we have any questions about inputs, outputs, and outcomes so far? Or any thoughts?
Yeah, I I actually do have some questions. I don't know if you're going to cover it, so I'll just ask it, and maybe you might cover it later down the line, or maybe you might answer it now. But volunteers, I'm just questions in my mind about that. How do you cultivate maybe the spirit of volunteerism, tourism, and how do you discern people, what they're capable of, or if it's like a true thing that maybe they'll stick to what they're volunteering for. And then the other thing was raising money. Are you guys required to actually raise funds on your own, or do you have like a team of people that are dedicated to do that? And, just those two that came to my mind.
All right. I'm writing that down right now.
Daniel,
Yes. Hey, Cheryl.
yeah, I just wanted to comment on the last comment you made about, yes, the ultimate goal is for these people to have a relationship with God, but that may not come as immediately as the physical does,
Yeah.
like finding the job and getting the shelter, the housing and that kind of thing, maybe. So I don't think I can't read your mind, but I don't really think that's failure necessarily. I mean, you've laid the groundwork, and we never know when they are going to truly have that relationship with God. To me, that seems like almost, in some cases, a harder thing to attain than the physical.
Yeah.
That's just a thought.
Yeah.
When you said that, I thought, oh no, that's not failure.
Yeah.
I don't want you to feel like you failed.
Yeah, that's a great point. Because ultimately all we're doing is planting seeds or watering, right? And God's bringing the increase.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. So probably a better way to say it is, if I got you set up in all of those things and I never mentioned God, I never told you how important a relationship with God was, that would be the failure. That would be the part where I'm like, oh man, why didn't I tell him? Why didn't I tell her?
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine in your job that you would ever do these other things without mentioning God. So
Yeah.
I can't separate the two in your situation
Yes.
as I would in like a lay person that, their job is not helping people.
Yeah. Anyone else? And then I'll get into it.
I just wanted to ask again, the website of your mission, where you work. Did you say
Okay.
GRM? Yeah.
Yeah, it's GRM for Gospel Rescue Mission. And then Muskogee is the name of our town, Muskogee. And our website is .org, but if you have that GRM Muskogee, that'll anything that you want to look at as far as Facebook or Instagram or probably Twitter, any of those kind of things. I don't know what everybody's into.
Thank you.
It'll hook you up with us. So. All right. PACE volunteerism is kind of tricky. And it really depends on the situation, because I like whenever I'm in a church setting like whenever I was working with youth or something like that, and I would try to get people to volunteer to teach a class. Oh man, that was like I was saying, hey, anybody want to go get ran over by a truck? Come on. Like that's what it felt like, because nobody wanted to do it. Right. However, I do get more people that want to volunteer at the Gospel Rescue Mission. What's hard is they decide what they want to volunteer in. Everybody wants to serve the meal, right? Everybody wants to come and say, hey, can I show up and serve the meal? And what they mean is actually just serve the meal, like put the chicken on your plate, put the green beans on your plate, give you a fork, and say, hey, the water's out there or the tea's out there. Very few want to do anything differently than that. Some are very willing to do whatever, but I have this delicate balance where we're trying to have our guests learn these work skills. And if I'm bringing a volunteer in that doesn't understand that, then they're going to do it all for them. And that doesn't help. That doesn't help my guest. We use the term guest rather than resident, just because it reminds us to be a little nicer. And then on the other hand, it reminds them that this isn't your permanent place. Like you're soon going to have to go to your own house eventually, find your own. And so as volunteers come, I have to really pay attention to what their skill set is, what their understanding is. And so I like to do an onboarding. So I meet with them personally, face to face. I ask them, we have an online application that they do that kind of has our statement of faith and tell me about who you are, what your goals are. And then I go over it face to face with them. I want to know about this person, because for one, I want safe people around. I want to get a feel to say, okay, the way that this person approaches people feels abusive. So I probably don't want them around people that have been hurt and abused or mistreated all their life. So your personality is a little too harsh. I really can't use you in that way. I also, oftentimes, a lot of our tasks are manual. Like I need help cleaning out a basement or doing a deep clean of our building because we've got 60 people there, right? That are there every single day and they're cleaning, but it's hard to do a really deep clean. And so I need a group to come in and help us do a deep clean, once every so often, so that we can maintain the cleanliness, but give it a really good. But then I'll get, our demographic is typically female. The ones that follow us on social media, the ones that want to volunteer the most are typical females, 44 to 74. And so a lot of them don't have especially those that are older, might not have the physical ability to do some of the things. And so I have to think, what can you do? So I have a lady that she makes phone calls for me. She calls anybody that donated anything, whether they donated a pair of socks, whether they donated, $1,000. She calls them up and says, thank you so much for your donation. Without you, we wouldn't be able to do the things that we do. And so just thank you so much. So finding that place that the volunteer fits, and oftentimes just listening to what they're good at. Because a lot of times with us, the things that we're thinking of are we're just trying to take care of some immediate need right now. Okay, like our kitchen manager's going to be on vacation, so we need somebody to go in there and cook food every day, or to at least make sure somebody's cooking it. But if I listen closely, they might have some incredible skill that is just perfect for what we need, and that I haven't even thought of yet. And so listening to people and listening to ideas and being open to the ideas is important. As far as fundraising goes, I'm glad that's not my primary job, because I'm really not good at it. But we don't take any government money, nothing that's funded by the government. We don't participate in, and so we rely heavily on the churches, on individuals, on local businesses. There are a few grants that are designated for faith-based nonprofits, and so we apply for those. But our fundraising is really about presenting the need, just constantly presenting the need, and putting it out before people, and not just seeing the need, but really providing the story. Stories are powerful. If we just come and we say, hey, yeah, we gave a bed to somebody and they got to eat, thanks. That's a lot different than if we said, man, this guy, he was dropped off here. He lost everything. He was living behind a local subway station, because when Subway would throw out their trash, that's when he would find his food. Somebody found him and brought him to us. And because of donors like you, he's here. He gets to eat 3 meals a day. He has a clean place to sleep. He has clean, fresh clothes every day. He has all of his basic needs taken care of, and he's got his ID again. He's got his birth certificate in place. He's got 4 job interviews set up this week. That story is a lot more powerful than just, hey, we gave somebody some food. And so knowing those stories while still maintaining the anonymity of the person is crucial. So, as if you have your own ministry that you're trying to start out or something, I don't have a lot of advice on how to fundraise for that, because I've never been too good at it. I've raised it's been forever, but I raised $700 a month basically to go to missionary school. So that was basically from the church that I attended and another church that I worked closely with, that our churches really just got along. But I visited and spoke at probably 100 churches, and those were the only 2 that supported me. So it's difficult. But I do know that story is powerful. And so if you are able to present what you want to do in story form, you're going to get a much better response. I mean, you can give statistics, because that shows the need and puts kind of some, oh, wow, that's a high percentage to it. But if you don't have the story in place, it's difficult to fundraise. I know a guy, he actually volunteers with us. He claims 100% disability. He has 100 from the military. So he's not able to actually work to make money. And so, but he's a great ambassador for us. He actually rides around on a motorcycle and goes across the country and hands out Bibles to people that he sees that are, especially those that he believes to be homeless. He has conversations with them, and he gives them these coins that, have a Bible verse on them, and that have his contact information, things like that. And so, if he came to me and he said, and he used the power of that story because he's always telling me, you know, names and faces of people, and I'll be like, man, can I buy some Bibles for you? You know, I'm always, can I give you some money to buy the Bibles and stuff? And he never accepts it. But his story is so powerful that if he did, I would gladly support him as best as I could. So good, good questions. Yes, sir. I mean,
Yes. That guy you were talking about, that you from this, I think the Subway, behind Subway restaurant. So
yeah.
what was this situation? Was it did he have a problem with family or drugs, or what was this situation? Just to
Yeah,
get
it was,
an understanding.
he had a family that I don't know what happened in that relationship, but he had some family here, but he was from a few states west of us, and ended up somehow was dropped off at a gas station here in town that's right on a major highway that has it's a gas station slash Subway, and he would just sleep back there. You know, whenever he came to us, he was looking to restore some relationship with his grandmother. He'd had a bad divorce, and so his grandmother lived in Oklahoma. He didn't know the exact location. He just knew she lived in our state. And that's as far as he made it. Somebody just kind of dropped him off there. He didn't know what was available. Fortunately, somebody that went through there and grabbed him a sandwich a couple of days in a row, kept seeing the same person there, and saw him digging in the trash, and he looked kind of dirty, and struck up a conversation, learned about his story a little bit. So that's why we talk about affiliation and bonding. He discerned that it was beyond his means to be able to take care of him, and so he brought him to us. We checked him in, and he's doing really, really well. He's taking care of some medical needs that he had. He's working very hard. He's got really good at relationships, and he's one of our hardest working on in doing our program the best, one of the best at doing it. And so, but had that person, and this is why it's important, why I kept bringing this up, had that person just said, hey, you know, here's you a $10 Subway card, or here's you $5, or let me grab you a sandwich, we never would have met him. And his situation may not, I mean, God's going to do what he's going to do, but his situation may not have improved. He might still be in that, hanging out behind that Subway through all the rain and everything that we're having now here. And so now I believe it's been about 4 months since that day, and he's doing really, really well. So
That's an awesome
Thank
story.
you.
Thanks so much for asking that question. It really is an awesome story because it kind of just put like more missing pieces together for me, right, in my head that I can see building that relationship. Like you said, had I stopped by there, I would probably have just given him the sandwich, but like you said, when you build those relationships, you get to know the story and possibly can help them. It's so nice to hear that he's one of the best what do you say, you call them guests, one of the best guests in your
yeah,
facility. That's a great story.
yes, he's doing really well. He recently got baptized, and he's doing really well in that area too. So he said somebody loved me enough to tell me the hard truth, and that was that your life is we're not just going to give you everything that you want. You got to work for it, but that God's grace is free, you know. And we've had some situations where we've learned to walk. He's taken that lesson literally of the working from grace and not for grace. And so he's like, man, I've been given so much grace here. I've learned about God's grace here. And so he's working from that and not for it, which is pretty amazing to me. I love stories like that.
And that too is just another example of the goodness and compassion of God, because
Yeah.
it's really testimonies like that
Mhm.
that touch our hearts and hopefully empower people to want to know about that God a lot more.
Definitely. So we've been talking about these 7 marks of effective charity, or the ABCs of effective charity. We've talked about all of them so far: affiliation, bonding, categorization, discernment, employment or exchange, and then freedom. We dealt with exchange and freedom last week. And so today we talk about God. And I know we've talked about, God's heart all along, but this just to finish this out, we need to address it. So if poverty, whether it's and poverty can be physical or spiritual, is a broken relationship with God, with self, and with others, and with the rest of creation, then it just seems logical that a relationship with God can start to bring transformation to all of those other relationships. So if my primary cause of my broken relationship with myself or with others is because of my broken relationship with God, then if I start to address the God relationship, it's going to help me be better able to restore relationships with others. God is compassionate, right? So I came across this verse. It says, "Yet the Lord longs to be gracious to you. Therefore, he will rise up to show you compassion. For the Lord is a God of justice. Blessed are all who wait for him." So it tells us that he is just and that he is compassionate. And we've talked about God's compassion in the past. Remember, we went through the law and just all the laws regarding looking after those that were the outsiders, whether that was poverty or whether they were outside the Jewish community, outside the Hebrew community, or if they were widows or orphans. And so all of those things and more, we saw God's compassion. We saw God's compassion when he told Jonah, "How can I not be concerned about such a great city when I have people there that they don't even know right from wrong. They don't know their left hand from their right hand. How can I not be concerned?" We've seen Jesus interact with lepers and children and people that were hurting and sick. And so we see that God is a compassionate person. James tells us, this is the last part of James 5 verse 11. It says, "The Lord is full of compassion and mercy." He's a compassionate, merciful God, but God is also a just God. Proverbs 22 says, "Do not exploit the poor because they are poor, and do not crush the needy in court, for the Lord will take up their cause and will exact life for life." So God's just. He's going to make sure that his judgment takes place. Now, for us, it's good news because Jesus took that judgment. And so, but we see his heart right here for the poor. Do not exploit them. Do not crush the needy. Ezekiel 22 is talks about this some more too. It says, "The people of the land practice extortion and commit robbery. They oppress the poor and the needy, and they mistreat the foreigner, denying them justice." And so he's talking about extending it just beyond just the poor to all people, mistreating the foreigner. And so we've seen throughout our weeks together God's heart. So God is compassionate and God is just, but God is also a God of expectations. There are more than 1,400 ifs in the Bible. Ifs, are conditional. So I'll tell my children, hey, if you clean your room, then we can go to McDonald's for a Happy Meal or whatever. They like that. That's punishment to me, but they enjoy it. If. And so these look different, for example, like if my people pray, I will, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray. Or you might have one that says, when you return to the Lord, then I, the Lord, will restore you. And so it might come in different ways, but there are over 1,400 of these that show that God expects. He's expecting some things from us. His grace is free, his mercy is free, but he expects some things where we work out of that grace and out of that mercy, right? And so that's why we need to learn how to ask questions, because true charity takes into account the spiritual and not just the physical needs. And so asking those questions are going to help us gain a more personal knowledge. And that's what we want. We want more kind of personal knowledge. I enjoy book knowledge. I like looking at statistics. I mean, I don't like coming up with them, but I like reading them. I like kind of this book knowledge, theory stuff. And that's because I can compartmentalize it and keep it in its nice little space. Things get a little messy whenever you gain personal knowledge, because now you're starting to become invested in a story. So that guy that was behind the subway, somebody asked questions to gain a little bit of personal knowledge, and they became invested in the story and said, I can't just buy him a sandwich. I'm going to take him somewhere where he can get the best help. And so it's important that we ask those questions, because if we have a lack of personal knowledge and an overwhelming need, then our charity, our giving becomes transactional and not transformational, where all that we're doing is addressing symptoms, but we're neglecting the root causes. And so we want to try to get to root causes. We want our giving, we want our service to be transformational. We want people's lives to be transformed. We don't want just a transaction. We want transformation. When I go to a store and I purchase something and I give them money and they give me the product, that's a transaction. So if I go and he says, hey, I have a need, and he says, I'm hungry, and I say, here's some money, go buy you a sandwich, I'm making a transaction. But if I don't try to dive a little deeper, then I might be taking a risk that I'm not giving something transformational. And it doesn't mean that every conversation is going to be transformational, right? Because people are people, and we as people, we have good and we have bad. We have good traits and we have bad traits, and we have men and women that at times will be very honest and vulnerable and truthful, and then we have a lot that are going to hide and lie to protect themselves. So protection, it's a coping mechanism. And so not every interaction is going to be transformational, but that's our hope. And so learning to ask questions to gain some type of personal knowledge is going to help us make a better decision and give in such a way that's going to have a better chance of being transformational. And it could be that transformation doesn't take place right away. It might be long after that person has moved on or I've moved on. But hopefully somewhere along the way, the kindness and the love that we've shown will start to spark a transformation in their heart. That's the hope. That's the goal. Because I don't want to just address symptoms, but really some root causes. Sometimes I have to address an immediate symptom, right? Immediately, I'm hungry, and if I'm hungry, I'm not going to listen very well. When I personally get hungry, I can get a little angry, right? We have that phrase "hangry" that we use here. Means you're hungry and you're angry. You're angry because you're hungry, and so I might have to address a symptom right away, but I want to try to get to some root causes. You need clean clothes now. I want to know, and I'm going to give them to you, but I'd also like to know, how did you get here with how did you get here and you have nothing, not even a change of clothes? Let's talk about some root causes of that. Did you have to leave suddenly? Was there a break in a relationship? What was the root cause of this situation? And if we go deep enough, we'll see that that root cause was a broken relationship of some sort. But how do we get there? And maybe we're going one symptom at a time before we finally find it. Right? That's what doctors do, right? You'll come with some symptoms and they're trying to find a root cause. I'm tired all the time. And so that's a symptom. They're like, here's some things that you can do to make you less tired, but what's the root cause? Is there something going on inside of me or in my environment that's causing me to feel tired and run down and lethargic all the time? What's the root cause? Tiredness is a symptom, but there's something deeper. And so that's what we're trying to get at. What is the root cause? And I can only start to get to that whenever I learn personal knowledge. Because otherwise I'm overtaken by the overwhelming need. And so I'm like, here, take this money, or let me pay that. And then I go on feeling good about myself because I helped. And that's a good thing. But did I start to address a need? Can I trust that the next person coming along is going to try to get to a deeper cause? And so these are all things to think about and to consider. Anybody have anything on that?
One, Daniel, I think also from the video I watched this, I think this kind of ties into that, but you spoke of a time when I think it was a chaplain, you spoke about who kind of carried other people's burdens with him and into his own household. This might be kind of related to that, but are there some things you do in your work where to try to keep yourself from taking other people's issues and bringing it and carrying it yourself? If maybe there's some things you do to kind of help you with that, if you could share.
Yeah. That is a difficult one. I am by nature a very emotional person, and everyone's story can break me. And so and I'll be so invested in it that one of two things happen. I go to two extremes. Either I become so invested in it that I want to do everything for you, or I get so tired of hearing it and so tired of feeling like I get taken advantage of that I become callous. And so those are two extremes that I have to guard myself against. And so I have to, anytime I'm having a conversation with someone, make a conscious decision to say, God has me here at this moment for a specific reason, but God has that person in this moment for a specific reason. And I look upon my own trials that I've had and how growth has helped me, how they've helped me grow, how my trials have helped me grow. So I talked to this week in our chapel from James 1, where he says, consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of various kinds, because the testing of your faith develops perseverance. And so I have to keep that in mind, that testing and trials develop perseverance that deepen my faith. The same is true for that individual, whether they know it or not. They are being tested, and it's an opportunity for them to deepen their faith. So what I have to do is I have to make an outright conscious decision to tell myself their story isn't my story. I'm here to help carry a burden, but I can't carry the load. So if something's heavy, like I used to work in retail at Lowe's, a home improvement store, and we would get some things that would come in that would say team lift, right? And so, but I'd have moments where I go, man, I don't need anybody's help. I'm gonna just lift this myself, right? So I'd be moving the huge doors, or the windows that are 6 feet wide, and they'd be extremely heavy. But I'm like, I don't need anybody else until I broke one. And you know, fortunately, they didn't take it out of my check. They just said, quit being dumb. Right now, we have to reorder this special order product. And it's going to take another 2 weeks, and that customer is going to be mad. And every time they call, we're going to forward them to you to tell them that you broke their window. Right. So had I just paid attention and said, you know, this is a heavy load. It's a load that I'm responsible for. I'm responsible for making sure this is, in that particular situation, I was responsible for making sure that it was checked in, that it was what was actually ordered, and that it goes to the right spot, and that I label it correctly. That's my load, but I needed someone to help with that burden. That's why it says team lift. So I needed another person to come and say, all right, let me help you get it to where it needs to go, but you're responsible for it after that. And the same is true in my dealings with people. So they come, and whatever the situation might be, they're telling me a tragic story, or they're telling, you know, that the sheriff comes through a lot with warrants, or with subpoenas for court, you know, where they have to go and take care of some stuff. Sometimes I feel like I'm supposed to go with them. And then for other people, it's like, look, the reason you want me to go with you is because you don't want to face this. You want me to speak on your behalf and you not face it. But you've got to face it. It's your load. I'm going to help you. I'll sit there with you, but I'm not going to speak on your behalf on that particular thing. I actually have a man, I've known him for 4 years. 4 years ago, he came through the mission, and he and I are actually really good friends now. But he had some things in his past that he had to take care of, and he wanted somebody to go with him. And so he went to one guy, and then he went to the next guy, and he's like, will you go with me? Will you walk with me? Will you go and speak on my behalf? And they just said, nope, I think you should do that yourself. That sounds cruel. But what he was wanting was not somebody to be there, like as a support system. He wanted somebody to do it for him. And he faded to the background. But I didn't do the crime that made that warrant come about. So it wasn't mine to take on. It was mine to help him bear. It was his load. And so, you know, I could be there in the courtroom. I could put my arm on his shoulder. If I'm asked a question, you know, can you vouch for this man's integrity? And I could say, since I've known him, these are the characteristics that I've seen that are positive. These are steps that he's taking to grow. But ultimately, it's not mine to carry. It's mine to help him bear It's not my load to carry. And so that's why I love that that passage of scripture in Galatians where it's talking about bear one another's burdens, and then you go down a little further and he says each one should carry their own load. Is that Galatians 6? And so I have to make my mind up, because if I start to carry everybody's stuff, pretty soon I get really callous, because I'm tired of hearing everybody's carrying everybody's burden, and it's overwhelming to me. And then I start to think that it's all my problems. And then one of two things happen. Either I sink and I'm like, woe is me, and I lose everything, or I snap at somebody. Could be any number of things, but I've got to make that decision that I'm going to listen to your story. I'm going to be here with you. I'm going to support you the best that I can. But ultimately, it's not my load, it's yours. Good question.
Daniel, one more, the snapping part, how do you check yourself with the snapping? Because, sometimes, I might be with people and like inside, I'm like, oh, and I have to do something, to my mindset to get me on the right track. So how does that process work for you?
Yeah. I give myself permission to walk out on a conversation. And I'll tell why, like to the person, I'll be like, hey, I just need a minute. I'm sorry, I gotta go. I need a minute. And so I might walk outside, go for a walk around our building. If I really need time to reflect, I'll get in my car and I'll drive off, and I'll go for a 10-minute drive, and I show back up. Or I say I need a minute, and I go into my office and I take a few deep breaths. I'm learning that I used to shy away from all like go and learn to breathe, because I thought that was new age or whatever. But it's actually God's breath that he gives me, right? And so I learned to breathe deep, breathe low, because if I'm breathing up here, that's when I'm carrying my stress. And whenever we exert ourselves, we breathe up high, right? Which is a kind of I'm exerting myself. This is a fight or flight mentality. And so if I'm not paying attention to my breath, I'm in fight or flight mode. I'm in stress mode. And so I've got to come in and make myself breathe from my belly first before I fill up everywhere else. And so just simple things. And that makes me, that gives me time to think, to say it's really not that bad, and to pray and reflect and just say, and then I can come back and say, hey, listen, I want to continue this conversation, and I can say, let's finish talking about this now. Or I could say, I'm really not in a mental state at this moment that I can give you a good answer, a good response. And so we need to postpone this. Can you get with me in 30 minutes? Or it might even be, come see me tomorrow. And then I'm able to then think about it and plan, not plan my response per se, because conversations, they can go anywhere, right? But really kind of mentally prepare myself for the emotion that the conversation is going to have. Because whenever you're having what typically happens in my line of work is the person comes and it's something simple, the smallest of things, but it reminds them of something from a long time ago or something from their past that turned into a major thing. Right? Have I told you about I think I have told you about the guy that worked at the fast food restaurant that said he was disrespected and so he quit? Did I tell you guys that one?
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
tell
you
it so
did.
much, yeah. But he was there and he was working and got the job or whatever, and then he comes back that same day and says, I quit. I quit because I was disrespected. And then he asked questions, and the guy was just managing. The manager was managing. He was saying, go clean the tables. I'll work the register. There's a long line. But he read that in a way, something that was from his past, where whatever happened, the pain that he had, the kind of the you're no good, all of these thoughts, all of these tapes, some people still know what those are playing in his head. And so being able to come to this place to say what's real and what am I blowing out of proportion is very important. It's important for me because I might be reading somebody wrong, right? Somebody comes, sometimes I'll have somebody that looked like somebody else. And so I'll go, oh man, he looks just like that guy that used to cause me all those problems. And so the second he comes, I've already kind of put up this barrier. Like, you look just like that guy that kicked my car last time. So you're not going to I'm going to follow you out the door. You're not kicking my car. And it's not even, then the guy's coming. He's like the most humble, quiet, soft-spoken guy. And it's like God says, man, see what you did there? You're always talking about don't judge people, get to know the people. And here you are doing the very thing. And so I have to know going in that I'm going to be faced with situations that at times I'll have to address immediately, but I've got to make sure that I'm in a mental state to be able to handle it. And that comes from my own quiet personal time. So I've got to find those moments. I'm going to have interruptions, but I've got to make the best of the time that I do get to myself, to be able to reflect on God's reality and my current situation. So I don't know if that answered your question at all, but
Yeah, Daniel, that was great. Thank you. Your job sounds very difficult to me, though it might not be like the Lowe's job where it's physically demanding. I think emotionally and spiritually, it sounds very demanding.
oh yeah, the manual labor jobs are much easier for me. Sometimes I'm like, I just want to go back to clock in, clock out, lift a bunch of heavy stuff and go home, because then you're doing something physically and it makes you feel better mentally and everything too. This job is just trying. It's constant dealing with other people's problems that are so much bigger than you are. They're much bigger than, okay, I dropped somebody's special order window, and so now they're delayed on their project for a week. It's this person comes and they've been abused all their life. They've been taken advantage of. They're homeless. People misunderstand them. They have mental health problems. They've got all these things going on in their life. And so it's so much more surreal. It's so much more trying and emotionally draining, spiritually and mentally draining. But every moment's worth it. Every minute is worth it. And so I'm thankful for the opportunity to be able to do it. Doesn't mean that I don't have days or weeks or months maybe where I'm like, why am I doing this? But I know that the end result, I love how God works, because he'll typically send somebody back into my life that I worked, and they're like, man, God really used you to help me. And it seems to be at just that right moment where I'm like, I'm sitting there going, I'm going to pull up Microsoft Word and write a resignation letter. It's kind of like those kind of thoughts are going through my mind, and then I'll get that call, or somebody will just pop in the office and go, man, do you remember when I came to you and I couldn't stand you, Daniel, because you wouldn't let me switch beds, something dumb. You wouldn't let me go to a different bed. I wanted that bed and you wouldn't let me go there. And I was so mad at you. You taught me I don't always get what I want. And so what I did that day was in chapel, somebody talked about praying for your enemies. So I started praying for you because you were my enemy, because you wouldn't let me switch beds. God did something in my heart. Now I'm just here to drop off $100 in the safe because you guys helped me out. That blows me away when something like that happens, and it comes back full circle. So I love that. God seems to send it just right on time. And so I really do. That's my best. The final slide that I got. We're created in the image of God. We're longing for God. Okay, so yeah, I did want to address this because my last one just says a call to action, but this is the second to last. But all I want to say here, and I know we're probably past time, is the symptoms associated with poverty are a result of seeking after something to fill a void that only God can fill. So oftentimes, whenever you're looking at poverty statistics, they'll say because they're in this impoverished area, they feel hopeless, and so they're prone to addiction. Or they're in this situation, and so they're prone to drop out of school early. And then they'll throw all these stats at you as to why that's true. But I believe that the real reason is because there's this void that God put in all of us, and only He can fill it. And so we're going and we're trying to search after all of these things. And so we think that money's going to fill it, but then we get it and it doesn't really do what we thought it was going to do. And so then we turn to an addiction. And we're like, man, this feels really good, but then we need it more and more and more. And then we realize that really didn't do what I thought it was going to do. And so then we turn to relationship after relationships, and we keep chasing after all of these things, when the whole time the thing that we're looking for is God. And He was right there the whole time saying, I'm not far away. Just look at me. I see you. Do you see me? And so we're chasing after all of these things that are putting this wedge in our relationship with everybody and drawing us further and further away from God, or are they drawing us closer to Him? But what we're looking for is God. That's what I'm looking for. And so a lot of the symptoms that they say, oh, and if I say, tell me something about a high poverty area in your neighborhood, what I get, the typical answers that I get, and it doesn't matter if it's a big city or if it's a small city. All right. When I lived in New York, they said the same thing as they say in Muskogee. There's a lot of drugs. There's a lot of single parent homes. There's a lot of hopelessness. There's a lot of people taking advantage of other people. There's high crime. All of these things, I think, are a direct result of seeking after something to fill a void that only God can fill. Because once we start to get that God thing figured out, whenever we start to let Him transform us, it really transforms us. And it starts to transform our communities. Because it starts with a revival in my heart. And so I, in turn, want to love others better, like Jesus does. And I want to serve others more like Jesus did when He washed the feet. And so I think that's what we're doing. So this call to action is to do it. Is to work on your relationship with God. Work from the place where He's already taken care of it. So I really don't have any work to do. But I really want to work for Him because He's an amazing employer, so to speak. I want to do everything I can to tell everybody about Him, because I want everybody else to come work at the same company I work for, because it's a cool place to work, the kingdom of God. I want you to be a part of it. I want you to be a part of it. And so, because it's going to fill this void that we have. And so that's the call to action. And I apologize for going over time, but I had to get that one out there. You almost made me preach right there at the end there.
I felt it coming up. No apology necessary on my part. I enjoyed it. I'm glad you got that. Got to it.
Yeah. Next week is our last class together, right? Maybe we'll have to come up with some kind of email group or some kind of group to, if you have any questions or something, just to keep them coming, if y'all are interested in that. But I've enjoyed it, and next week I don't know that we'll have a lot of material, but I'd like to just have some conversation and do a little question and answer session if you guys are good with that.
Yeah,
I have
it'd
a
be
list
cool.
of questions.
All right.
We're eager. I have a lot of questions.
All right. I don't know if I'll have answers, but I'll be passionate about whatever I say. All right, let's pray, and you'll be dismissed. And again, I apologize for going over. Father, thank you for your love and for just having a heart for us. Yeah, fill within us a heart for you and a heart for your people, and teach us to love the things that you love. Teach us to go after those that you call us to love. Yeah, I confess that I don't know how to do that all the time. I don't know the best way to reach people. I don't know how best to draw them to you, but may we never stop watering and planting, because we know that you are going to bring the increase when that time is right. And so I just pray that you will open our eyes to see the harvest, that you will put people in our paths that we can point towards you, that we can point toward your kingdom. Thank you so much for each one that's participated tonight and throughout the previous weeks. We give you the honor and the glory, for you alone are worthy. And it's in the name of Jesus, our beautiful Savior, that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Good night.
Amen.
And thank
Thank
you
you.
guys.
Amen.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good
Good night,
night.
everyone.
Right.